Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to begin looking back over the past year in Louisiana agriculture. And Avery, it seems like just yesterday that we were under a sheet of ice across the entire state.
It does, but that was actually back in February when winter storms Uri and Viola brought severe freezing to our state. The cold affected many in agriculture, from the row crop farmers with wheat in the ground to the cattlemen with frozen water troughs and many in between.
Our coverage began with Grant Parish farmer Ryan Yerby. He had cows delivering new calves into the world in this pasture, and his water troughs were frozen solid. In his field, rows of sprouting wheat struggled in the cold, causing concern the crop would not survive and make it to harvest.
Without having the snow in front of the cold weather and getting the ice first, we're kind of worried about the wheat being at the stage it's in, that the growing point was exposed to the ice and caused some pretty significant damage to the crop. We're still 10 to 12 days out from really knowing how badly damaged it actually is.
The crawfish industry came to a halt also with muddy conditions and frigid waters. Alan Lawson farms rice and crawfish in Crowley, and he says the crawfish simply were not moving, and weeks of crawfish harvest were lost to the storm.
You can't send somebody out in this weather. It's dangerous in those boats. It's slippery, it's icy, it's cold. You know, and then you're not going to catch when the water's this cold. They're just not going to move. Not going to catch anything. Just because we've lost a week here in the peak part of the season doesn't mean we'll get it back at the end. Because when the weather gets hot, the crawfish will bury and the season's over.
When the winter storm settled into Louisiana, sugarcane harvest had just finished, but there were many acres of newly planted sugarcane affected by the freeze. According to LSU Ag Center sugarcane specialist Kenneth Gravois, Louisiana's sugarcane crop came out with minimal damage. He says the state's northernmost acres of sugarcane were most vulnerable due to freezing temperatures. But better varieties and short-lived freezing temperatures meant this year's crop escaped any major damage from the event. That's a welcome piece of good news in this coverage.
The livestock and poultry industries were severely impacted by the winter storms. The LSU Ag Center estimates animal deaths alone accounted for more than $6 million in losses. Infrastructure damage to barns, poultry houses, and equipment account for nearly 70% of the $110 million of the winter storm's total estimated impact to agriculture.
And the man who coordinated all of that research is Dr. Kurt Guidry with the LSU Ag Center. He says while the overall damage estimate in relation to the annual farm gate value of Louisiana is pretty low, for the farmers who were impacted, many of them will take years to recover.
Some of our horticulture producers, you look at some of our fruit and vegetable producers that were impacted here. You know, again, as I mentioned earlier, we had some reports of producers losing 90 to 95% of their prospective production. So certainly for those producers, that storm is one that's going to be remembered by them for quite a long time, because it did create some significant difficulties for those producers.
Now, Congress did pass disaster legislation to financially help the farmers impacted by this storm, as well as the hurricanes in both 2020 and 2021. Now it's just a matter of getting that money into the hands of the farmers.